Within twin flame discussions, I've noticed some people discussing abstinence or even celibacy on their journey. And I think most go through this simply because they don't have desire for anyone else, because the experiences with others are often compared to that with our twin flame and are just dim in comparison. Even after often attempting relationships or even just seeking something casual, nothing seems to work. Some people pull away from exploring other options because that's what they think they're supposed to do in order to come into union. But there are also some people who just want to do that because they feel that's what's best for them. At the time that I decided not to be sexually active, I hadn't heard anything to do with abstinence or celibacy amongst twin flame topics, but had been getting a very strongly repeated message that whatever I do, my twin will do. So it really stood out to me when I saw other people discussing this as well. One song that came as a sign, it played almost daily over a period of many weeks, was What Goes Around Comes Around by Justin Timberlake. And this song continued to show up when guys from my past showed up. So this is something I really started to take notice of. And even though I didn't have physical interactions with them, it gave me the opportunity to practice the things that I'd learned in my journey so far. And honestly, I think that's why they came back around. But this message came in other forms as well. I actually wasn't dating or wasn't sexually active with anyone at the time, but had been in a casual sex relationship with someone a couple months prior to this message coming in. And it just so happened that this same guy ended up coming back right after I took this as a message, because we had stopped seeing each other for a few months. But when I realized the message, that's when he showed up again. Originally, I took it as if I'm sexually active with other people, then my twin will be sexually active with other people. Now, I viewed this in a couple of different ways the more I thought about it. One way was that I wasn't going to deny myself the pleasure of sex or intimacy, because that's something I had done in the past where I was hoping for someone to return after things had ended with them. But also, I just didn't have the desire for other people because, for one thing, I was depressed. And that was actually during my first denox, which I call the ego check. And it was before I met my twin flame. But after I came out of that ego check, I swore I would not do that to myself again, deny myself like that. Also, with that thinking, I feel like if I'm doing it for that reason, because I'm afraid that my twin will have sex with other people if I do, and I have no idea if he's been in a relationship or what his status is to do with any of that. But I feel like if I'm doing it for that reason, then I'm refraining for all the wrong reasons. Like, I told myself I had to get out of that feeling and thinking that I could potentially control any of this anyway, right? Well, since then, I've learned a lot more about what unconditional love is and the freedom involved with that. Also, the boundaries that I've set for myself are sturdy now, so I've come to think of this very differently. But another way that I took this was that it's part of my spiritual growth and healing and will reflect on my twin. So, what I do will help him, and in doing what feels right for me will also help him do the same through self love. So, when that guy came back, who actually looked a lot like my twin, and that wasn't intentional. In his pics, he didn't look like my twin at all. But when we met in person, he was the exact height and build as my twin, had the same hair color and style. Facial hair was the same. Like, if I saw him from the side or from behind, it was easy to think he was my other experiencer, as I like to call him. But I decided to continue seeing this guy, and for some reason, we didn't click like we had in the past. It just felt all wrong. Just the way that whole thing with him seemed very part of divine planning for me, because I strongly felt that I was being shown what I'm sharing here. But I took this as part of my spiritual growth and helping me to align with my best self. And there are other things that go along with that, of course. It's not just about abstinence, and that may not even be a part of the journey for some people, but I do believe many are led to this because what our journey is teaching us is to establish spiritually built relationships. And by that, I mean relationships built through our authenticity. And a big part of that is that it reestablishes the feminine and masculine balance. This is why the feminine energy is the spiritual twin, the one who leads the spiritual aspects of the journey, which ultimately do lead the journey because the physical aspects, which are led by the masculine, mirror the energy of the spiritual growth that the feminine goes through. But the feminine is the spiritual twin because I believe the feminine is setting the bar to bring that balance of the feminine and masculine dynamic back to our world. So, for that reason, I do believe that true twin flames are going to experience a refrain from sexual activity, whether it's intended or not. This is why you may hear accounts of unusual difficulty with other relationships once you've met your twin flame, at least until you find balance with your authenticity, what your heart desires. But definitely being our best self, which is aligning with our higher self, being attuned to our soul frequency, does mean a lot of things. And of course, this will vary from person to person. And it's not about being critical or overly focused on things, but rather treating yourself with respect and loving yourself as you are, because God's love is unconditional. And we don't have to be a certain way to receive that love. So I have to remind myself to be patient and compassionate with myself. Just wake up each day and knowing that I'm enough, while allowing myself to be guided in these things that I'm being shown. Because it's not about being perfect, but about finding balance for myself, which is unique to me, even from my twin. And I've been going through some mental changes that very gradually come in without me seemingly intending to think about them. And it's like my mind is getting changed. And of course, for me to change outwardly, I have to experience that internally first. There's some mirroring for the journey. But understanding the dynamic as I do so far, I know that my 3D related growth is not going to compare to my twin's 3D related growth, but it will energetically mirror his spiritual growth. And his 3D related growth will energetically mirror my spiritual growth. And also, most of us awaken to our journey with the overwhelming desire to just get to where we're going. Like, we obsessively search for how to do this in the beginning so we can get our twin. But when we really start experiencing the growth our journey takes us through, we come to realize we were actually not in a place for authentic interactions. Because as hard as that is to accept, once we open to our journey, we begin to find balance within ourselves, and we know that that obsessiveness is not our truth. So everything we've experienced through our journey has taken time. I'm gradually going through spiritual growth and physical growth, meaning 3D related growth. So it takes time. None of this happens overnight like we hope for it to, until we get to that place of surrender. So back to abstinence, I think many of us are going through this to the point like we have a choice. But for me, even after I had gotten that message the way I took it at the time, I was still with that guy once more. So it's like I had the chance to make the choice, but ultimately I didn't make the best choice for myself. I believe it was meant to happen, or at least I do believe that no matter what, it can all be used for our growth. And the way I thought about it at the time, I mean, I wanted sex and I wasn't looking for anything more with this guy. And that's what I told myself. Like, it even came off as an excuse that it's okay because I'm not expecting anything from him. I don't want anything from him. So then divine intervention stepped in and got rid of him. And I really felt that that's what happened. But there's a bigger reason why. Because when I said that I didn't want anything more from this guy, that's actually what I was being shown. I had to acknowledge what was in my heart, which is the desire to have something deep and meaningful with someone I can look into their eyes and feel the love shared between us and have trust and peace and happiness with them. When I acknowledge what my heart desires, it's not aligned with my best self to be intimate with someone who I don't have that with, what my heart desires. And that's not even getting into the energetic exchanges. Because when I'm in it physically but shutting my spirit out, that's not aligned with my soul, because my heart desires something physical and spiritual. Like, whoa. That really speaks volumes for me, because I talk about spiritual and physical all the time. So it's not that I couldn't be with someone casually if that's what's in my heart, but it wasn't. And I know that because here's the big thing. I know that that's not what's in my heart because of what I feel for my twin. That showed me my truth. My twin showed me that, and I cannot deny that. But to be in our authenticity, it's not just love for them, it's that love, that same love for ourselves. And to know that we deserve to have that love. So this is leading change within me to build relationships through what my heart truly desires. Like, if you take nothing else from your experience with your twin flame, take this. Take that you know what your heart truly desires by how you feel for them, and don't deny that for yourself. And it goes beyond that. What that means for my job is what my heart desires there. what that means for my family, what that means for a life partner, and anything else. So, this was when I really started understanding that my journey is guiding me to this in all aspects of my life. So, my higher self put that in front of me again to look at that message again with this new thinking. So, I asked, how does that message of what goes around comes around relate to that? If I'm building my relationships in my truth, then he is too. And not only that, but it affects others we interact with. That's sharing higher vibrations with others. We're opening to vulnerability and authenticity, and I don't know what that means for him and other partners, and that's okay. But I do know I want him to experience that depth of love I saw in his eyes because he deserves it, and so do I, and so do you, and so does your twin. And you may not be there right now. It took me some time to get here. And this actually sheds light on a misconception people say on repeat. And if you've watched some of my other stuff, you may know that I believe our words very strongly matter. And this is one of those times where how people discuss this, I feel it can be misleading, which is that the feminine focusing on themselves causes the masculine to focus on them too. And that's fine, but it's understanding what's really going on that I'm talking about. Because if you don't understand, you're missing the big picture. And that's not that they're focusing on the feminine, it's that the feminine is loving themselves and the masculine mirrors that energy and loves themselves, which is far greater than them just focusing on the feminine. And yes, that's all reflecting when each love themselves, they also love each other. But that's just one of the results of them loving themselves because of the shared soul. And even others will reflect that energy. Because when the masculine comes to the feminine through self-love, there's power in that. There's truth. It's setting the foundation with unconditional love. And something I like to do is insert nuances when I use words like self-love or unconditional love, 5D consciousness, unity consciousness. Like you can also say when the masculine comes to the feminine through divine energy, there's power in that. There's truth. It's setting the foundation with unconditional love. Or when the masculine comes to the feminine through the higher self, there's power in that, and so on. And I could go on and on. But I got a little more from that song that I wanted to share. Like, I think about the lyrics and how we might hurt each other energetically when we deny our heart's desire that way. But also learning what I'm learning, I believe he's getting that too in his own way. And even if it's not showing right now in his life, I believe it will, and he will look for fulfilling his heart's desire. Because I do, without a doubt, believe that energy is what happens with a shared soul. What goes around comes around.